Thor Kerr. Thor lectures in the School of Media, Culture and Creative Arts at Curtin University. His research looks at the public and media representations of the practical, political and ideological negotiations that take place around the ways in which urban space is developed. His most recent book is Indian Ocean Futures, Communities, Sustainability and Security. Thank you, Christopher. I'm not an artist, unlike Abdul Rahman. I tend to look more at audiences and what we do with art, and perhaps that art works over time and how it enters political discourse, and how political discourse turns into art. So it may not be as interesting, but I'll try and work something up as we go. My first contact with political art in a big way came when I left Australia for Jakarta back in the early 1990s. And I was living in East Jakarta, which was pretty much a slum back then. But the good thing about living in East Jakarta was that there were also a lot of artists living in and working around that area. And the one place that was really great to go and was either cheap or free at the time was a place called Taman Ismail Marzuki in Jakarta. And it was a theatre complex, but they also displayed all types of arts and did all sorts of experimental art in that setting amid a kind of a backdrop of enormous repression from the Suharto regime. And there was this kind of oasis where people could critique the regime, make quite obvious critique of the regime without mentioning the regime. So it was often stories about, kings going awry, about use of the people, or that these kind of themes would be worked through the theatre in really interesting ways. And as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old at the time, you could feel the power in this art. It was just incredible. It's like nothing, or at least in the audience engagement with the art, from the aesthetic, if you like. There was this incredible power, and I kind of believed that this power would be strong enough to topple the Suharto regime one day. And it may have had something to do with it, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Indonesian cinema at the time, or around the years, sort of the mid-1990s, late 1990s, was also really amazing. And I've got one, you can see it, one little slide there for a poster for Dan di Atas Bantul, which is really a movie about interrupting sleep, as if everybody is asleep. It's about what happens when sleep is disrupted. And it was a movie financed by Christine Hacken, directed by Gavin Nugroho, and Christine, who's an actor, also starred in it. But it was an amazing film that involved street kids, not actors. And this film was put together right at the end of the Suharto regime. And I guess what it was trying to say is that we're all in this together, no matter what your status is. So no matter if you're a street kid that snifts glue, we're all together, we're all brothers. And we're all being abused because there was an abusive male within the film. And as they're all being abused, finally this man is beaten up by Christine Hacken and kind of beaten to the ground, and she does this slow spit. It's not like an Australian spit, you spit on someone. It was this amazing slow spit that lands on this guy, and it just kind of finished him. It was almost the father figure, the patron of the street kids, if you like, has been destroyed and isn't coming back from here. And it was a really, really powerful film. But I don't think it was a thing that brought down the Suharto regime. Clearly it wasn't, partly due to the fact that it was a big film overseas and not a big film in Indonesia. What was more likely to have brought down the Suharto regime was this picture, the other picture there, which is Michel Candasu of the IMF, basically overseeing President Suharto signing one of the IMF packages within which the Indonesian government kind of submitted to the will of the international financial regime. And this is an image in Indonesia that's read very much as a colonial image. It's if you like, it's the failure of the Suharto government to stand up to the colonial forces that have acted upon it for several hundreds of years. And it was very much an image that people were familiar with. It looks a bit like the image of the Japanese surrender in World War II. which was playing through Indonesia. So this image went through all the media, played through this kind of media space, and there's a whole lot of other things that were going on and had a tremendous impact, probably a bigger impact than any of the artworks that I saw. But for me, it kind of left me with this idea, well, what is the role, and an idea we're talking about today is, well, what is the role of art? How does it work? And what is the importance of art when a newspaper and television play such a big role in regime change? So this thought was with me for a very long time, but I didn't act on it in any kind of research way until a few years ago. And I came across the work of a Dutch academic called Martin Heyer. And Heyer was an environmental, he was really like an urban planner, did research in that area, but focused on looking at environmental movements. And one of the studies that he was involved in looked at a project which was called a nature development project. This was about 15 years ago. And the Dutch government was trying to introduce its ecological policy into the farmlands, into the rural scapes. So the policy sounded nice. It was about the reintroduction of streams and forests and returning the Dutch landscape to something that was pre-agricultural landscape. There was a social movement that reacted to this central government proposal, and the social movement worked by setting up frames in fields along the highway system and put up these scaffoldings, just 30-foot frames in the fields. But they looked a little bit like this as you drove by, and you looked through the frame and you got a glimpse. And the idea of this social movement was to remind people that this is what nature looks like in the Netherlands. This is everything that everybody has seen for the last, say, 300-400 years. And the image we're looking at there is Landscape with Cornfields by Solomon van Rijsdale. And that was in 1638, at the start of the Golden Age for the Netherlands, the start of its colonial period as well. So there's a lot of fond Dutch memories of wealth and success and Dutch society going back to this period. And in that social movement, this is the way the landscape should look, and this is the way the landscape in these particular towns and areas where the social movement occurred, this is the way they stayed, because there was immense power drawing on this idea of landscape art. So that was an interesting study to read. And it helped me a few years later when I did my PhD at Curtin. I was taking a look at the North Port Quay reclamation project, which was proposed for Roos Head down at Fremantle. And what was happening in the community response to this project, which looked like this, there was an immense community reaction. Nobody wanted the project except the developers and a couple of politicians. But I found that there was something to do with a beachscape, how beaches are represented, and particularly how they've been represented in Australian culture, and how this representation can also be abused and used to really bad effect, but it's in a powerful representation. So I tried to understand what this representation is, and when I got to the bottom of it, I felt that, like the landscape here, it wasn't just about the painting or the photograph, it was also very much about the experience, the human experience of a day at the beach. So maybe the laughter with friends, the sunshine, the smell. It wasn't a single instant. There was a whole lot of aesthetic things going on. And what people in Fremantle, this was back in 2008, 2009, what they overwhelmingly seemed to want was a return to their day at the beach, and not something that looked like this. So I tried to figure out what was going on theoretically, and it seemed to me that the very simple landscape image like this or this enabled people to bring maybe their experiences, or to fill the art with their own meaning, or fill their art with their own experiences of a day in the fields, or perhaps a day in the beach. And this was a very important thing. So for me, the power in art is about the kind of the meaning that people can bring to the art or associate with the art. And I think this can work politically in a very pragmatic way. It worked for Adele Carles and Lynn McLaren in response to that beach project. They went and stood on the beach, did all their press conferences on the beach. Other politicians, and back then Barnett was against this project as well, he went down to the beach. So any politician who had a kind of any sense of experience or understanding of the community would go and stand on the beach to kind of state their opposition to the project. But aesthetically, the interesting thing that happened, the last straw, well, the developer was interesting in this case because they also tried to represent the beach in their advertisement, the final round of their advertisements in a similar way. But unfortunately for the developer, a big storm came through and tore down some of their signage. And I remember walking into this sign, I think from down somewhere like Fillmore Street in Fremantle, and just seeing it, and it had this amazing kind of moment. It was almost like immersive art where you see this thing, and you can clearly see that the sign is not sustainable, and it's almost like the Fremantle gods have spoken. They don't want the sign. But that was just me and one person. There was maybe only one other person walking down the street the time that I was walking down there. But this is a photograph by Steve Grant in the Fremantle Herald, and that then went out to potentially, I guess, through 80,000 copies of the newspaper, and it did its bit. That kind of representation perhaps killed the project, even though it was the developer's original representation. So for me, I guess, art, photography, theatre, they all play through our kind of political spheres, and they play through in interesting ways that are sometimes unpredictable. So at the moment, I'm turning my attention, whenever I can, to back to Indonesia, because there are some fascinating social movements emerging in opposition to reclamation projects. There are similar projects, like this one being designed and proposed for Teluk Benoa, or Benoa Bay behind the airport in Bali. And it's a really interesting movement, more so than Fremantle, which didn't have such an artistic edge. Some of the art that came through the Fremantle opposition was either in photography or perhaps in the letters to the editor, a kind of poetics running through the letters. But in Bali, it's a much more overt art movement, where they have poster events, they make sculpture, they have rock and roll performances on the beach. And the movement wouldn't be a movement without the work of people like the young men in this band, Superman is Dead, and also the people making poster production. 10 minutes? Fine. Okay. So with this is an interesting movement. I'll talk about this one again because it brings me back to the start. The development consortium behind the project, and it's something like a 700 hectare project, is a company led by a man, and a company that really emerged out of the Suharto regime. So although Suharto fell and his regime was put to bed, the money and the capital and many of the players are still there. They're still trying to assert themselves, maybe in a way that is kind of similar to the way they used to play back in the 1990s. Unlike the 1990s, when an opposition is expressed to a project now, like this, there isn't a mobilization of the army against the people. It's pretty much a mobilization now of Twitter account operators and other people trying to undermine the art movement. The other thing that this art movement is doing in Bali, which is quite interesting, is they're trying to connect with the 1966, 1967 massacres and the trauma that went with that. So this band in particular has released an album, and if you look it up later on when you get home, they had a song that came out called Sunset di Tanah Anarki, and it's a kind of a ska song, so it has this kind of, resonates with that early, I guess, post-colonial kind of ska movement. But within that, they're singing a song about, it's really about a love song about and around the massacres and the people that died and the people that were arrested. So what they're trying to do through art, they're trying to connect the people's struggle for democracy with this particular case and this beachfront site, which is, I think, something that only artists can do because it's too complex to connect in any other way. So if you get a chance and you go to Sanur or Bali, you can take a look at these protests when they come around, because they're coming around routinely, and try and hook up and see what they're doing, because it's pretty fascinating work and pretty fascinating to see art at the forefront of political struggle. In the meantime, in Perth, I think there are good things happening in Perth. A couple of weeks ago I went to immersive theatre by Teresa Izzard. It was on Frankenstein, so as we kind of this theme, we move into this new era now of the word that we won't talk about. we may get to the point, or in 10 years we may find ourselves in a situation where we can't express ourselves openly, such as in the Suharto regime. And if that happens, we will probably have to return to looking at very much this kind of artistic representation to deal with the horrors of a time that we shall be living in. That's it. Thank you.